say definitively that religions are all bullshit.
Welcome to Brainstorm.
We have the explicit tag for a reason.
This is a base level argument to a higher level morality.
I get paid to science?
Two science as much as one can science. What the hell was my point?
Trigger warning. The Brainstorm podcast will criticize your most cherished beliefs. We attack nonsense in all its forms and discuss difficult subjects. If you peddle pseudoscience, supernatural woo, or religious dogma, then this is not your safe place. This is the home of hardcore skepticism.
All right. Hi, and welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast, Skeptic Studio, where we do interviews, major topics, and news related to skepticism and atheism. I'm Cory, and my panel tonight are Angela.
Hello.
Lisa.
Bonjour, les amis.
And Rene.
Hello.
With the always amazing Dave doing sound.
Hey there.
We're in Roman Empire Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan, and today is June 9th, 2017. Our guest tonight is Dr. Karen Garst, author of Women Beyond Belief and blogger at The Faithless Feminist. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I noticed there was a little French. Je peux parler en français aussi.
Mais nos écouteurs ne pourront pas comprendre.
Oui, c'est dommage, hein?
Yeah, we only got
We
the
were
one
insulting
person
you,
who
Cory.
actually...
We were insulting you, Cory.
I have the most French name here, but I don't speak a word of it.
You can't even pronounce your name properly.
No. I've anglicized my own name.
Yes, you have.
Yes, I have.
I only know swear words and
Well, that's useful.
what I learned off the cereal box when I was a kid.
Yeah. I learned a little bit of French when I was young and lost it.
Grade 12, that's about as far as I went. I passed it.
Yeah.
End of the story.
But anyway, so I guess a good place to start would be, how did you get into writing about feminism and religion?
Well, it's an interesting story. In 2014, in June, the United States Supreme Court issued its decision in Burwell v. Hobby Lobby. And in that decision, it said that there were three privately held companies who took the suit, and it was appealed to the court. Because of their religious views, they didn't want to provide certain forms of birth control to their female employees under our Affordable Care Act, commonly known as Obamacare. And it was a 5-4 decision, and I became incensed. I thought, we went through this. I remember before abortion was legal. We shouldn't keep doing this. And I happened to be having lunch with a friend of mine who's an author. And she said, we should write a book.
Nice.
So it was kind of the timing of that. And I said, well, the only thing I can get pissed about is religion. So I started out and decided to write a book about people telling their stories of leaving religion. And it ended up to be 22 stories of women, 18 to 70, all different walks of life, different parts of the country outside the United States. And then, you can't just write a book. You
Right.
got to have a blog, you got to have a YouTube channel, you got a Twitter account and all of that. So I hired a marketing consultant, and here we are today.
Wow.
Not bad. So did you have more than 22 stories that you had to whittle down to a 22, or did you have to go reaching for that number?
Well, I started out with people I knew. I live in Oregon, so it's pretty progressive. I had a lot of friends who were atheists. And then I started to go to we have a lot of atheist groups in Oregon, and I went to those and told them about my project, and I got authors involved that way. And then I reached out through social media, which is where I got, the woman who was born in Africa and one who was born in Peru,
Nice.
To give it a little more diversity.
That's very cool. What are some of the more, extreme religion or almost, are there almost cults that some of the women came out of?
I think that's fair to say. one of the comments I get from people who have read the book, the first essay is by Anna Wilcox, and that's a pseudonym because her family doesn't all know, In fact, 4 or 5 of the authors are writing under pseudonyms. And she was raised as a fundamentalist, which is about as close to a cult as you can get. And some of the things she says in her essay they're just incredible. She said that they were taught not just that they committed sin, but they were sin.
Oh, geez.
And she said it created such a debilitating perfectionism with her that she questioned everything she did.
Yeah.
And that continued for, 30 years after she left the religion. She called me several months ago and told me that she was sitting on the Oregon coast. And she said, I just had this epiphany. I feel good about myself, for the first time, like I'm okay. I'm a good person.
Yeah.
And she said writing the essay helped. So that felt really good. But yeah, some of them are just amazing, really.
Right.
Wow. To be told that you are sin, that's tough.
That's pretty intense.
Well, part of the work I've done over the last few years, I started to read more about religion and atheism, and I discovered a lot of this early mythology about what was there before there was this monotheism. Mm-hmm. And, y'all in high school did the mythology course, and there were these pantheons of God in Rome, and you could probably name a few of them. But when more women got involved as archaeologists and anthropologists, et cetera, they discovered that there was probably early on one of the first beliefs, I'm not even sure you could call it religion, was in a mother goddess, mm-hmm. which makes sense because they didn't understand a lot. And here's this woman, and she bleeds and doesn't die, and every time the guys go out and get, hunting, if they bleed, guess what? They die. And she ends up having cycles that are similar to the lunar cycle. And 20,000 years ago, they knew this. I mean, they knew what the lunar cycles were.
Yeah.
So there's this veneration of the female. And what's interesting about when monotheism came in, particularly in the Judaic tradition in Canaan, there was a goddess called Asherah. Okay. And if you read a lot about this mythology, the goddess was associated with a snake because a snake rejuvenates, they go into the earth, they come out again. And the mother goddess was seen as part of the earth. The creation was all part of that. And so what do you have in Judaism? You've got every single symbol for the goddess taken down. You've got the woman blamed. You've got the snake. You've got a tree, which was associated with Asherah worship. And so it's just amazing when you unpack all that, how against women the religion started and really continued.
Like the first MRAs or something.
Yeah.
Men going their own way.
Yeah. That's about it, eh?
A backlash. That's interesting.
Well, if you look at the Old Testament, I mean, the woman is considered dirty and unclean because she had her period.
That's right.
Yeah.
And she's, some of them were sent to a red tent. I told my husband about that, and he said, well, that sounds, they have their period, they go into a tent? Wow. And I said, they don't take the kids. And he said, never mind. But they were never allowed in the temple because they were seen as unclean, which is a total antithesis of how the goddess was viewed.
Very interesting.
So it's a long history to get to where we are today.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Be careful because I could go on and on about that.
So keep going.
No, I don't want to stop you.
One of the things you do as an author is you try to develop presentations so you're not just talking about the book. And I developed a presentation called From Goddess to God, Elimination of the Feminine Divine. And it's on my YouTube channel, Faithless Feminist. And I do it when I go to book signings, et cetera. And it's really fascinating to see this representation of women in the Paleolithic with all these figurines that, like 70% of them or so are female. And the continuation of that, even, up until, well, I think the goddess worship probably lasted the longest in Crete. And to see these images of a woman and snakes, and then to see what happens in the first chapter of the Bible. I mean, it had to be intentional. If you're trying to create a new religion, putting the other one down is what you start out with.
Could it not have been a reflection of a evolving patriarchy in their culture, right? Like as society became less hunter-gatherer, more agricultural, more civilization-based, became more patriarchal, could it not be the religion started reflecting that attitude?
Well, I think that's a very good point. I always say it's downhill since agriculture. If you look at hunter-gatherer societies today, they're much more egalitarian. And people posit that they were more egalitarian in the past. There wasn't a hierarchy. There weren't a lot of roles, but differentiation in roles. And women were gatherers. They hunted small animals. So, there's not as much differentiation. But when you start with agriculture and private property, then you have ownership of property. And if you have ownership of property, then you want to defend it because it's yours. You don't want somebody else to attack it. So you've got all these issues of defense and fortification. And then the other issue that comes along with that private property is, and patriarchy as well, is you want to be sure that property goes to your son. And in order to do that, you have to be sure the woman you marry is a virgin and that she doesn't commit adultery. So you see through the Old Testament the emphasis on adultery, the emphasis on virginity, because this is it's not necessarily the beginnings. I think patriarchy was already there when the Israelites were in Canaan, but it gets more and more enforced. And remember, there's no separation of church and state. So those who have the power are also the head of the religion.
So how do you address there's certainly elements of a female type goddess worship in a lot of different religions. I'm thinking particularly of Mary and Catholicism. Can you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Well, the Virgin Mary is fascinating because if you'll remember, the second commandment says, "Thou shalt create no images."
Right.
And today in Judaism, there aren't images. There aren't images in Islam because of that. But what they found was that, Christianity kind of took off, in the 3rd or 4th century. And that's really the start of the Dark Ages. People were illiterate. They weren't even allowed or supposed to be reading the Bible. So how are you going to teach people? Well, you're going to do it through pictures.
Right.
And one of the first pictures was Mary and the child, the infant Jesus. And one of the reasons I think that Mary assumed such a big role is because there was still this craving for the goddess. And there's a set of verses in the Old Testament in Jeremiah where they say, look, we're on hard times. This is terrible. We're going to go back to worship the Queen of Heaven, because when we worship the Queen of Heaven, everything was going great. So you see this dialogue even in the Old Testament. It's not hidden at all. And Karen Armstrong, who's a well-known writer, said it probably took about 600 years to really get monotheism with a male deity in place. And she says it probably happened after the exile in Babylonia, which occurred in 598 BC. Well, what does Babylon have? Babylon has a myth called Enuma Elish. And what happens there is Marduk is one of the male gods. And he says to his bros, hey, guys, if you let me be top dog, I'll kill off Tiamat, the female goddess. And they say, okay, yep, sure, let's do that. And, they end up with this kind of monotheistic religion. Well, the Israelites are there. They're reading this and go, gee, maybe we lost because we still have this kind of goddess thing hanging around. Let's really be firm monotheists, and that'll put us in good stead. And it wasn't just Babylon. That transition from a pantheon of gods and goddesses had happened elsewhere. So you always see similarities. I mean, cultural reproduction or mythology, they always take a little from somebody else and it gets accreted and synchronized with their myth, and then they lend something to somebody else. It's not out of whole cloth. I mean, it's all built on top of something else.
I was just thinking, I mean, I know that in early human culture, the mother goddess figure is almost in every early culture that you can find.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if something like the Virgin Mary hits on that nerve for people.
The Virgin Mary rises in prominence. What's really fascinating is that, first of all, she's just the mother of Jesus. Then she's totally pure, right? And she's born, as I don't remember if it's as a virgin or whatever. And then
most
later
children
on,
are born as virgins.
she ascends to heaven. So we have these, one in the 19th century, one in the 20th century, where Mary is really elevated in position within the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fascinating to see the role she plays and the opposite in Protestant.
So that's like a big thing. Like that's the one part of the big rifts. I remember a teacher in Catholic school telling me, telling all of us, do you guys know what the Immaculate Conception is? And we were like, well, that's Jesus's conception. And she's like, no, it's Mary's conception. Little known fact. And like, oh my God, it was a big deal. We were all just mind blown.
That's it. It started out with her just having Jesus, and then the Immaculate Conception, and then it was the Assumption, and then the Ascension. So you have all of these things every few hundred years giving her a higher status. So she's highly revered.
Give the people what they want, right?
Wow. And now she's like an intercessor of sorts.
Is she?
It seems like it in some aspects.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why, Hail Mary, Mother full of grace, etc. I was raised as a Lutheran, but I knew that much.
Right.
I know it in French and English from Catholic school.
Oh, there you go.
Catholic school.
So what's your background? You mentioned in your book that your dad was pretty strictly religious and your mom sort of, but you were given a good solid education, like the zest for learning and stuff.
Well, I think, I was born, in fact, I turned 67 yesterday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
It's the 60s are the new middle age. So I just kind of came into middle age yesterday. Yes.
Nice.
I was born in North Dakota, not far from you. And in the 50s, everybody went to church. There were 6 Jewish families in Bismarck, and we knew who they were. And I knew everybody, whether they went to the Catholic school or whether they were Methodist, Presbyterian, Lutheran, etc. You just knew it. And I attended Sunday school from a young age. I went through confirmation. I had to memorize Martin Luther's catechism, which was very boring.
Whoa. That's hardcore.
But it wasn't at all fundamental. I mean, it was more the Jesus is love kind of thing. There wasn't a lot of real doctrine. You went on Sunday. We had a thing in high school called Luther League where we went bowling and ice skating and stuff like that, potlucks. Nice. So it was really more of a social activity. But when I went to Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota, which is a Lutheran college, for my undergraduate work. And the first course you had to take a religion course each year. And the first one talked about all the different oral strains of the Old Testament, the 2 different versions of Genesis. Why were they different? Because different people wrote them. How can you tell different people wrote them? Well, because of a literary analysis. And they talked about the exile in Babylon as a real event. So that to me was really fascinating and an eye-opener. But in grad school, I kind of drifted away from religion and really didn't do much until I met my husband, and we went to church for a while, and then he was always a lapsed Catholic. So we kind of drifted away from it. And we never really joined an atheist group. It was just, okay, well, we'll sleep in on Sundays. We won't have to do it.
Right.
So I do when I lay down to sleep, my little head goes, now I lay me down to sleep and pray to Lord myself to keep, and I go, wait a sec, you don't believe in that anymore. Quit that. And my sister's visiting from Arizona, and we're going to go to the Oregon coast this week, and we'll sing hymns, because we did that so much. And it's that ritual. It's that sense of community. It's the music that keeps people there. I'm sure there's a ton of atheists sitting in pews singing Onward Christian Soldiers.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people that atheist movement people have been saying is that that's what we fail at, is this community thing that so many people get from a religion.
I feel like we don't need to throw out our old traditions. I mean, I can appreciate an ancient Greek vase with Zeus and Apollo on it. Why can't I appreciate a hymn, right? I don't believe that it's divinely inspired, but I believe that that human beings made a really nice song. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, and music arose in Africa 50,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's so deeply embedded in us. I once saw a program about Alzheimer's, and the man didn't recognize his wife, et cetera. And they got in the car and he was asking all these questions, and they went to this other place, and he got up and performed with a band.
Wow.
Remembered every word to every song.
Oh, geez.
Well, they've done that with...
That's deeply embedded inside your brain.
Absolutely.
If the rest of the cognition isn't there, but boy, I remember the words to the song.
Absolutely.
I read once they figure that like musical vocalization developed before speech.
Okay.
So, I mean, music's been around for quite a while.
Finding a beat or whatever.
Yeah.
It makes sense because, they heard the birds, they heard animals, and they may even have done some of that to attract animals.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty basic thing to do. Yeah. And I'm sure our first speech sounded like an animal.
I read about a study where it was I don't remember how they show that this was true, but that human babies respond to mothers singing because mothers would go off and do something and they would sing to their baby to let them know that they're around. So it's a way of being away from your baby, but your baby knowing you're there.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really cool.
That's very cool.
I have no citation for this. I remember reading it somewhere a few years ago.
Citation needed.
Yeah. Come on. Jeez. So what do you think is the most, like, you've compiled all these stories from women who have left religion, and what do you think is the biggest concern or the biggest frustration facing women who have left religion?
Well, part of it is losing that community. Marcia Abelman, who's one of the authors in the book, she was in Colorado Springs when she and her husband decided they didn't believe anymore. And they had been going to this church for a long time. And when they left, nobody wanted anything to do with them. Mm-hmm. They lost every single friend they had in that church. Wow. So, a lot of people wouldn't leave the church because of that. They just keep going and maybe believe something different and maybe not go quite as often, but they don't want to lose their friends.
Yeah.
So that's tough. And I spoke to somebody today who had was doing a blog that had a lot of atheism in it, and she took it down because she lives in a very conservative part of the United States, and she's worried about her kid in school.
Yeah.
That he's going to get taunted or bullied or something or made fun of, et cetera, or, something worse.
That's sad.
So I told her she could always move to Oregon.
Or Saskatchewan.
There you go.
Where there's lots of religious people, but I've never felt, I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
Have you?
In rural areas, it's worse.
Yes.
Yeah, when you drive down to Weyburn, there's like 20 anti-abortion signs. Billboards.
Yeah, that's true. Lots of anti-choice.
It makes me it makes my blood boil. Like I feel my cheeks get red. I'm just,
Well, we counted at one time in Weyburn. There's I think there's one church for every coffee shop.
Well, one of my authors moved here from England, and she said, as an adult, they were married and they decided to move here. And she said, in England, they'll tell you, you turn left at the Lucky Lab pub and turn right at the Black Tavern. She moved to the southern part of the United States, and people would say, turn it First Christian, and then left at the Methodist Church. And she goes, I don't know where any of those churches are.
my goodness.
And it's true. When you go to the South, there's a church on every block practically. Mm-hmm. They don't call it the Bible Belt for nothing.
Yeah.
No.
There's pretty much a different kind of Christian down south for every comma in the Lord's Prayer.
Just about.
Exactly.
Oh, geez.
So, go ahead.
Well, I'm just curious about what you did your grad work in.
Oh, well, I have a master's in French literature.
Aha.
And it was kind of postmodernism, and I thought it was totally ridiculous, so I quit. And then I moved to education, and I have a PhD in curriculum and instruction from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And what's interesting is my dissertation was on a French sociologist called Pierre Bourdieu, and he talked about cultural reproduction. How does culture reproduce itself? And so here we are 40 years later coming back to that. He created this word called habitus, and he said, habitus is everything around you. It's your race, it's your economic level, it's your parents, it's the town you live in, it's your religion. All of those things create who you are, and we're mostly unaware of a lot of the impact of that. So I never really used the PhD until I put the PhD after my name on my book, but I'm really talking a lot today about cultural reproduction. You know, how does religion reproduce itself? What are the elements of culture that are used to deeply embed religion in the lives of the people who are religious? And it's
an
kind of
interesting
the same
subject.
thing he was talking about. So, I graduated. I got my PhD in 82, and there weren't a lot of jobs, but I'd been real active in the Teaching Assistants Association, which is a union. And I got a job with the American Federation of Teachers and moved to Oregon in 1980. And I did that for 8 years. And then I was executive director of the Oregon Community College Association for 8 years. And then I was executive director of the Oregon State Bar, and I lasted for 13, which is, for me,
That's awesome.
that's a lot. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Good to keep your career fresh, though, right? Every 5 to 10 years, flip it over.
I like to be on the learning curve.
Yeah.
These last few years where I've been learning more and more about religion is fascinating. And, 5 to 8 years and I'll move on to something else.
Fair
When you're
enough.
only middle aged, you still have like another 50% of your life to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to have something to keep me busy. I can't just sit around and read murder mysteries. I have,
Or knit.
yeah.
I'm you can't see, but me and
She
Angela
says that
are
she's
like, I'm
knitting.
knitting and she's crocheting right now as we talk to you. Yeah.
But I'm working on a needlepoint tapestry.
Oh, nice.
Woman in the Unicorn, which is a French Gobelin tapestry.
Beautiful.
And it is 250,000 stitches.
See, you're ambitious.
I only do it when I watch TV. And, 6 years, it's going to take about 6 years. And what will my husband have to show for 6 years of watching TV?
Nothing.
A
Nothing.
sore butt.
So
Right.
I will have that tapestry. Yep. I told my son he has to give it to his grandchildren.
Yeah, that's a heirloom.
Amazing. I want to see that.
Oh,
Sounds
Every
almost as
step of the
epic as
way.
your quilt.
you email me. I'll send.
Perfect. Okay. Sounds good.
It's become the crafting podcast. That's too damn bad.
Well, when you grow up in the 50s in Bismarck, you got to do something on those cold, snowy days.
Right.
There's one channel on the television set. There's phonics.
Hey, I bring my knitting to the beach.
Records. You learn to, yep. And of course, we were raised when I went to school, girls had to wear dresses
Right.
in North Dakota
Oh,
to school.
Be cold.
cruel.
Yeah. So there was, and when I was growing up, it was a woman could be a secretary, a nurse, or a teacher.
Yes.
That's what they were. So it was a different time, but I enjoy the work. I enjoy it.
That's good. That's so good.
So you mentioned that you have a few, some excerpts from the book. I
Yes.
wonder if you might indulge us with a little bit of that.
I would love to read a few of them. And I'll stop after each one if you have any questions. This first one was a woman I told you that had called me from the coast saying she had an epiphany that she really felt good about herself. She was raised as a fundamentalist. And she says, as I tried to let my beliefs go, my head seemed far ahead of the rest of me. I would think, that makes no sense. But I would be assailed by intense fear and doubt. I felt all of my old fears and beliefs still skulking inside, like the biblical Leviathan, a sea monster that lurked in the deep. I felt wrong, as though I had committed a terrible crime and I was going to be punished. Whenever I got near anything to do with religion, a Christian coworker, a bumper sticker, a debate, or a speaker, something on the internet or the news, even or especially my own family, I went into a tailspin of dread and doubt for days. I kept thinking the fear would diminish, but it went on for months and months. My fear was so ingrained that as I wrestled with my beliefs, I had shadowy nightmares, and I felt like things were creeping up on me in the middle of the night. As I sat in my chair reading, there were times when I involuntarily glanced upward, as if lightning might crash through my ceiling. When I attacked my beliefs about Satan, it felt as if he was in my room with me. This was a complete surprise, not to mention freaky. After 30 years away from my religion, my mind was still being assaulted with irrational fear for disbelieving.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like the idea, like if you think about ghosts or whatever, that and then you kind of feel like there's something watching you almost. Like it's something that people have said they've experienced, and yeah, that kind of what she's trying to think about, how she doesn't believe in Satan anymore, but it feels like he's right there. Wow. Kind of interesting.
That really hits home for myself because I grew up in a very strict religious household, and I mean, as I've deconverted, there's been those moments of like the ground just releases from underneath you, and there's that quote unquote security of having those beliefs that are total bullshit, but as you let go of them, it's like, oh, what, and you kind of have those moments of fear, and it's weird how those thoughts still permeate, even though you know in your rational mind it's not real, it's not a thing, and then as you try and parent your child, and you say something and you have to catch yourself because you're it's so automatic and it's so deeply ingrained inside of you. You just it's such a process. Like the people that just turn it off like a light switch, like I envy those people.
I feel like it's a question of conditioning. Like
it is.
It kind of reminds me of somebody trying to get out of an abusive relationship, right? You're conditioned to think a certain way about yourself, to have a certain feeling about yourself. And over time, it just becomes part of who you are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and there's that connection too about a relationship with God being similar to a relationship with an abusive partner. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're dirty. You're sinful. If you don't love me, you're going to go to hell.
Going back to your question, Angela, about why this book about women leaving religion as opposed to people generally leaving religion. Maybe there's something to be said for women being particularly susceptible to this, to being told they are unclean or they're less. Maybe, I don't know, maybe women care more about what on average, like what is thought of them and want to comply and want to be. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, Karen.
Well, I think that, it's kind of interesting if you look at the atheism movement in the United States. Well, there's a lot of different ways of it's how people say they're atheist, are they agnostic, et cetera. The majority of them are men.
Yes.
And if you just go to Amazon and say, give me the top 100 releases on atheism. From 2 to 6, maybe, of those books are written by women.
Right.
They're predominantly written by men. But who are the ones that are most subjugated by religion? I mean, women have much more of a reason to leave religion than men do.
Yeah.
I mean, the men are in charge. They're in control. We're the ones who are seen as sinful and dirty and unclean. So it's really interesting how there are fewer women who are willing to say they're atheists than men. And that's one of the reasons I limited it to women, because I thought there was a real dearth of books written by women about women. And, the other thing about stories is we all need models. If I would have, I wrote a paper about early Australopithecus hominids, et cetera, when I was in junior high. it never dawned on me to be an anthropologist. Never saw anyone. I never saw a woman science teacher, nothing.
Right.
So this book gives role models to women to say, hey, you can do it. You're probably not going to have it as bad as Anne. You're not going to have it as easy as the people who were pretty much raised secular, but somewhere in between. And we look at other people who are like us and say, okay, she did it, I can do it. We need to have those role models. So that's why I think it's important to have more women's voices. But I've been amazed when a couple years ago when I started doing this, I saw a lot of debates on YouTube, and they're almost all Christian men and atheist men.
Yeah,
Right.
no women.
Yeah, I think you're right.
There are not a lot of women. Now, part of that is, the whole new atheism movement came out of, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, and Sam Harris, and kind of those fields of science and philosophy, more or less, that kind of took the ball and ran with it. But
those are all white men, and there's women in science.
yeah, but we're gonna have to speak out more and more. I was very pleased that I was contacted by a woman named Wendy Marsman, who lives in, I think she lives around Ontario. Don't quote me on that one. And she was going to start a podcast. She'd been a missionary for 30 years or something. Anyway, she came to atheism kind of late, and she wanted to do a podcast about women. And somebody told her, how about Women Beyond Belief? And she Googled it and found my book. And she was so polite. She said, I won't use that title if you don't want me to. I said, are you kidding? No, let's work together. So I was interviewed by her. Several of my authors were. And now I'm reading my blog posts, and she's putting them on. So we're cooperating, working together to give more voice to women. But if you go to conventions, atheist conventions, a lot of them, the majority of the panels are men.
Yeah.
So we got to be out there as women. We have to speak out. And I hope this encourages more women to speak out.
I'll tell you a story quickly, Karen, on the plus side. I don't think it takes long to change attitudes. I happen to be a physicist myself. And the other day, my 5-year-old, I'm driving him in the car, and he says, Mommy, can boys be physicists too, or only girls allowed to be physicists? I said, we let boys be physicists too. He's like, okay, I'll be a physicist when I grow up.
Well, when I was director of the bar, half the class law school was women. Wow. And that had really occurred in about the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Because women really started to get into the legal profession in the 70s. So, I'm sitting at a buffet with women lawyers, and one of them saying, my daughter's going to be a physician, or my daughter's going to be this. And, it's
just one generation ago, it would have been unthinkable, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, my mother was born in 1913, and she wanted to be an artist. And her father told her, you will be a teacher. And so when she went to college, she wasn't allowed to pursue what she wanted to pursue. Right. And she waited until she retired. And I have her paintings all over my house.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That is very cool. That is.
Let's see. Let me read. This is a kind of reflection on the United States. This is a woman who grew up in Germany, and she came over when she was 25. And her husband was also an atheist. And they moved to Arizona, which is going to tell you the tenor of this one. She said, I try to ignore the constant talk about God and politics. None of this made sense to me. I had never heard German politicians say, God bless Germany. Yet American presidential elections appeared to always involve pride in the candidate's Christian belief. To me, it seemed quite evident that no atheist would ever be elected president of the United States. I discussed this issue with a friend once, and she accepted this fact as normal and even desirable. She said she was never going to give her vote to an atheist. Once again, I was flabbergasted. She smiled at me and said it was okay. She told me that eventually I would find God. I just hadn't tried hard enough yet. Invited me to her church and insisted that if only I gave it a try, would certainly find faith there. It was different and more relaxed than other churches, she said. She couldn't wrap her mind around the fact that there were people out there who were not trying to find God. Everyone was, according to her. So there's somebody who came from Europe, which is much more secular than the United States, finding a really, really different situation here.
Wow. That's interesting. That's interesting.
That's kind of how I feel. I don't know, looking at people who are from a more religious background, I'm just like, like I was kind of from like an eye rolling Catholic family. Like, yeah. Like nobody ever went to church. You just I don't know.
I think I get that from both sides of my family. Like that's, just come. You haven't looked hard enough. You haven't asked the right questions. You haven't read this book, or you haven't, come to this place. Like, just wait and you'll see.
You still get that from your family?
I still do.
And you talk to them. It's really good. You're the best person.
There was a guy at work that told me one time, said we were just kind of discussing some of this kind of stuff, and he came out with the statement that it's like he thought it was sad that you didn't believe in something. And I just kind of looked at him and went, you don't want to start that with me.
I hate that argument because it's just like, you can't believe something's true just because you want it to be true. I would love if unicorns were real. That'd be wonderful, but that doesn't mean I can believe in them.
Well, me being the smart ass, I'm just like, come here. I'm a Neo-Aztec. Give me my obsidian knife.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm going to do a quote from one of my authors whose parents were secular, but she started to go to the Seventh-day Adventist camp.
Okay.
And, again, it's a sense of community, hanging out with kids her own age, et cetera. And then her mother took her to India. And she talks in her essay about the change that made. But at the end of the day, I kept coming back to one simple realization. I fundamentally did not believe that one religion, Christianity, could tell another religion, Hinduism, that it was wrong, that its deities did not exist, that its moral compass was askew, that the beliefs of its people, while noble, did not coincide with the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and his Father in heaven God, and therefore could not possibly be valid. To me, Hinduism embraced beliefs and morals and a lifestyle that was so much more relatable and beautiful than anything Christianity, even in the Seventh-day Adventist form, had ever taught me. The thought of discounting all of it to adhere to a religion that I was essentially born into by way of my geographic location was completely backward. I couldn't get over the notion that devout faith to one religion obliterates the ability to believe in another, despite the fact that so many millions of Hindus formulated their realities and structured their, in my opinion, much more meritorious belief systems based on those religious principles. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I think is fascinating, is that my God is the right God.
Yeah.
Okay. The one in the Middle East, not the one in China. Why did God come there instead of somewhere else?
Yeah.
And, the thing for me that, and it's not even like a belief in God. It's like, why would you want to believe in that God? That's a God that didn't intervene when 5 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust.
Right.
Why would you want to believe in that kind of a God who didn't do anything?
Yeah.
Didn't intervene. Let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's a big point for me.
But what are the chances that the real God, the right God, happens to be the God you were raised to believe? Right? Like it happens to be you were born in the United States, and so you're a Christian, and it happens to be the right one. Good thing you weren't born in Saudi Arabia, because you totally believe the wrong one.
Well, there's always the one true religion. You never admit it's the one true enough religion.
Well, and it's always the us versus them, right? And that comes. You can use that in other areas too. These are the charts. This is where the beliefs differ. This is this, and this is that. And this is why their religion is not true. And this is why ours is true. And when there's such cognitive dissonance when you're deep in that belief, you're like, totally makes sense. You made a chart that has colors, and it's so pretty, and it's well packaged. And it's just, in hindsight, it's nauseating.
Of course it's true. There's a graph.
I made a flow chart.
And it's always also interesting when you look at early Christianity, how many different interpretations there were.
Yes.
I often think of, what if Charlemagne hadn't declared it the religion of the Roman Empire? What if his mother hadn't gone to Jerusalem and found all these sites and was totally convinced? what would have developed today. But those were all just like, we were talking about cultural reproduction, and it is melded and formed by all of these different things. But once it's yours, you ignore all those backgrounds. Oh no, this is it. This is the right one.
Yeah.
And I was thinking today, I was reading a email from the Americans United for Separation of Church and State. And there are some great organizations, I'm sure in Canada as well, that work on separation of church and state and do their best. But to me, it's not enough, because I think religion does more harm than good. I think if you analyze it to somebody, well, gee, believing in Santa feels good.
Yes.
Would you really want your son to be going Sunday to talk about Santa Claus? Of course not.
That's right.
It's mythology, and it doesn't really take a lot of study, to see how it's formed and that it's changed. Like I said, even in the Old Testament, you can see it. And there's a very difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's almost like they're two different gods.
Yeah.
Sounds like heresy.
Well, I knew a guy one time, the way he described it was he had the Old Testament is like the angry father. And then you have the New Testament. He's like got the hippie son. That's how the two get separated.
Yeah. That's
well, and it's the other thing is, if you look at old religions, atonement was really important, and that's why there was child sacrifice. You look at the story of Abraham and Isaac, and if child sacrifice hadn't been a part of that culture, that story wouldn't be there.
right.
Now, that may have been the turning point. It may have been the point where that religion said, we're not going to do that anymore. Because God intervenes and says, okay, don't kill Isaac. But that atonement issue is exactly what happens in the New Testament.
Yeah.
And God sends his son. Who would be proud of somebody saying, here, kill my son? I'm going to send my son to be killed. Oh, great. Why don't you just... I mean, that's nice. Sacrifice your son. And you couldn't come up with a better way to do it than that. That wasn't very creative thinking. Mm-hmm. So that anytime you take one of these pieces and look at it carefully, it makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a good point. You're going to sacrifice your son. I think I'm going to get my ethics from you. Exactly.
Well, in the story, what's interesting about the story of Abraham and Isaac is, where is Sarah?
Yeah.
Doesn't she
Sarah's
turn to
the
salt
mother?
or some shit?
No, that's Lot's
Is
wife.
that a different one?
Well,
She's Sarah too, right?
She is the mother of Isaac. She's not seen anywhere around. And it's almost as if that's the point where it becomes monotheism. That's where it's the male deity. The wife, the mother of that child, isn't anywhere there. And there's another story that's never taught in Sunday school of Jephthah's daughter. And Jephthah says to God, if you let me beat the Ammonites, I will give you the first person that walks out of my house, or the first thing that comes out of my house, or whatever. And sure enough, he beats him and goes back home. And guess who's the first person to walk out of his house? His virgin daughter.
Huh.
And God does not intervene and said, oh, it's okay. You don't have to sacrifice your daughter. Basically, she goes up in the mountains for 2 months, bemoaning the fact she's going to die a virgin, and he kills her. That's in the Old Testament. I mean, they don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
I don't remember
it's
that
a story
part.
there.
She was sad she was going to die a virgin, not that she was just going to die, period. I mean, like, I'm never going to get laid. I'm so sad.
That's kind of how I felt too.
Sounds pretty sad.
I was like, oh my God, I was so looking forward to that.
I'm willing to die,
I
just
can-
not a virgin.
I can really relate to that, actually.
Mind you, if you think about that, that'd be the ultimate pickup line for a guy around there. It's like, hey,
Worried about dying a virgin?
Yeah, you might be a sacrifice.
I could save you from something really bad.
Yes, exactly. That documentary, the name is "Give Me Sex, Jesus." It's
Sorry, what?
It's there's a documentary called "Give Me Sex, Jesus."
Please
It's
explain more.
fascinating. It just deals with people in and around religion and how organized religion basically just how it views sex and stuff like that, and how people who are religious and like some people are part of the religion and some people aren't anymore. And it was fascinating because there was lots of people in that documentary that were like, I'm going to die a virgin. I'm going to die a virgin. Because when you're in your 20s, you reach that point if you're going to church, all of your 18, 19-year-old friends are like in serious relationships, and then they get engaged. And like a lot of them, like 4 to 5 of them are getting engaged, and the engagements aren't very long because they want to have sex.
Yeah. You know, that's true with the Mormons too, right?
I was the 1 out of 5.
I would have married you, Angela, if I'd known you.
Damn it.
That would have been really supported by your family.
Well, I have to tell you the story of this woman who wrote an essay because it fits in perfectly. She is raised as a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
Very, very conservative. And you're only supposed to date somebody of your own faith.
That's right.
She goes to college and she meets this guy. And, is really troubled by it because she's not supposed to be with him and eventually has sex with him and somebody rats on her. So she gets called before 3 men, the elders of the church, finds out later that one of them is having an affair with somebody else's wife.
No way.
Critical. But, and they basically tell her, you must consider him a tool of Satan. And she says, the fluorescent lights became unbearably bright as I felt my body stiffen, preparing for my reply. I stood my ground and continued to refute their offensive correlation of my love with the devil. Trying to reason and explain my logical feelings, as opposing as that sounds, to this tribunal of elders was futile, though. In this church, females were not given voice and stature. Therefore, for me to come into the room prepared for anything but groveling for forgiveness was tantamount to disrespect. I had naively presumed they would treat me with the respect and openness that I had been raised to believe I deserved. And in the heat of that moment, I did not recognize the danger I was in by voicing my thoughts. After a solid 2 hours of back and forth, they left the room for an agonizing 90 minutes to deliberate, during which time I sat alone in the back of the room at the Kingdom Hall feeling confused, abandoned, and pissed.
Oh, my gosh.
And that was really where she gave up her religion. But she wrote anonymously because in that particular religion, if somebody becomes an atheist, you cannot have anything to do with them.
Yeah.
Whether they're your family or not, they are totally ostracized.
Like no speaking whatsoever? Like
None.
You
And
come to
her
Christmas?
mother knows and her father knows, but her cousins don't.
Right. Doesn't go any further than that.
Doesn't go any further than that. So she wrote with a pseudonym today. I mean, like in 2015 when she wrote it.
Right.
Wow.
In the United States, in Oregon.
I've heard of similar situations with people leaving Scientology. Similar sort of.
Well, Scientology.
That's how they control people, right?
The Amish
Yep.
are that way too. You can,
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Haldeman Mennonites are totally like that, but you can still hang out with them. That you just can't shake hands. You can't.
Well,
and
atheism
you
goes
can't eat
through
at
the
same
hands
table,
and food. It's well known.
and you can't accept gifts from somebody
And
who's been
presents.
excommunicated. Or
Presents, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew all that. It's scientifically proven. That's how atheism transmits.
Yep.
You know that our builder had a group that he worked with that was Mennonite, and they wouldn't shake his hand.
Is that right?
Yeah. I remember hearing that story just recently
Yeah.
because there's a Mennonite community around where I live.
Okay. My father's a former Haldeman Mennonite. And I still have family who are still involved in that. And it's quite fascinating as much as it's immensely infuriating.
You've got the best family, Angela. Most interesting Thanksgiving dinners.
I bet.
Yeah. I have a funny story. I don't know. No, I won't tell it.
Now you got to tell it.
I don't know. Maybe I already told the story. Stop me if I have, but my dad's cousin was visiting, and she's a bit of a rebel. I don't think she's 100% atheist, but we were sitting around the table, and my mother was telling a story about a woman from her church who had gone to another country and she obviously was like doing some kind of mission or something like that, and met a boy, and they
Became missionary.
Well,
I get it.
My dad's cousin said, well, that gives new meaning to the missionary position. And I just about choked on my food.
Your dad's cousin and I get along very well, Angela.
She's fantastic. Let me say that. But yeah, it's a fascinating religion. I mean, the people are salt of the earth, good people. And it's just amazing how completely deluded they are. And they think that by excommunicating people, they're ultimately going to get them to come back. And I mean, it speaks to the whole community thing. Like when women are leaving religion, it's that loss of community, I think, because
for some women, I'm sure. Or what about loss of your children? You know what I mean? Like if you're
well, and all kinds of things too, because like if you think about it historically, we're the gatherers. We stayed home while the guys went and got the big meat. And we stayed home and took care of the kids, and we did all that stuff, and we hung out with other women, and that's been ingrained in us for many, many years. And now, you know, you grew up in a community, and then you realize this is not for me, and then you don't have a community. It's
well, even just in our modern society, how much are women conditioned to care about what people think of them, right?
Exactly.
Well, and my 96-year-old mother-in-law is still head of funerals and potlucks at her Catholic parish.
96.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Hashtag goals. That's amazing.
Well, Sonia Johnson, who was excommunicated from the Mormon Church about the time the ERA amendment was going around, said her vision is that the pews of all the churches are empty of women. Because, you know, if the women weren't there, they'd collapse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they're doing, you know, men might go, and there's some very, very religious men, but the women are doing the grunt work.
It's true.
Yeah.
They're making squares for the funerals. They're making the pancakes for the pancake breakfast.
Running the craft table at the activity, you know, yep.
They're baking the muffins and the strudel. Yes.
Oh, well, I have a book called Lutheran Basement Women. You know, because in North Dakota, the basement's where all the kitchens were.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. It's got some recipes in there because that's what women did in the basement of the churches. Yeah.
That's your book?
No.
It's one you have.
I have the book.
Yeah.
It's called Lutheran Basement Women. I think it might be a cookbook. I don't know.
kinda
We
like
just
that.
moved. I don't know where it is.
Fair enough.
I'm going to look that up. I'm intrigued.
Well, send me an email and I'll find it and I'll tell you about it.
Okay, sweet. Sounds good.
Well, I guess we're coming up on close to an hour. Do you have anything you'd like people to listen to, or where? I guess we know where they can find your stuff at faithlessfeminist.com, but anything else you'd like to plug?
Well, I do have, I've started, there's a couple of podcasts that I have featured on my website. And one is Women Beyond Belief. The other one is Secular Feminism. And I'm going to be adding to that. I'm really impressed. You have two other women here having the conversation. Because a lot of the podcasts I'm on, it's only men interviewing me. So.
Right. Well, I'm not going to pat myself on the back
You're
too hard
welcome,
here.
Corey. You're welcome.
Very progressive.
It is 2017. I really.
But just keep up the good work. We have, it's kind of depressing during our last election and what's been happening lately. You, of course, have that cute guy.
There's so many people that hate him. It's hilarious.
Oh, golly. At least he can talk and he's rational. I mean, it's so embarrassing.
Your bar's a little low there.
I was in Canada and I kept on saying I'm an American, but I didn't vote for Trump. So anyway, keep up the great work. My book is Women Beyond Belief, Discovering Life Without Religion. The audio book finally came out. If you want it that way, it's available electronically all over. And I think Kobo is your electronic book, and it's available in that as well. And then if you just Google Faithless Feminist, you'll find my YouTube and my blog and all of that kind of stuff.
I follow you on Facebook.
Oh, cool.
Thank you so much for joining us
Yes,
tonight.
thanks for coming. And we're going to go to a commercial. Thanks again. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what we're doing and want to help us keep the lights on, go become a patron at patreon.com/brainstorm podcast. You can hear the bonus half hour that we record every episode and get a shout out when you support the show. Become a patron for just $1 an episode at patreon.com/brainstorm podcast. Or you can support the show by ordering a t-shirt, mug, or other gear from our store at caffeepress.ca/brainstorm podcast gear. If you can't afford to become a patron or buy gear, then why not give us a rating or write a review on iTunes or Stitcher? Every rating makes it easier for people to find us. Thanks for your support.
We are given one life, full of billions of small and large decisions. To be somebody, to change, to be kind, to give hope, to become a better person, and to leave a lasting impact on this planet. It is a decision to be made every single day while your heart is still beating. We've made our decision. Absence of clothing. Atheist and science-based apparel and merchandise, donating 50% of our profits to charity. Look good and feel good, without God. Check us out at absenceofclothing.com and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest for discount codes and other sweet swag.
Use the code BRAINSTORM at absenceofclothing.com and get 10% off.
The Atheists,
the Bible,
and No Wardrobe, the podcast.
Wait a minute. No wardrobe? You mean we're going to be naked while we do this?
Well, seeing how I'm an atheist and I'm reading the Bible, and since clothes are flammable, fire, I thought it might be a good idea to take them all off first.
Naked or not, follow along as we read, analyze, and try to keep you from falling asleep as we go through this boring-ass book.
Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spreaker. Who knows? We may even be on YouTube someday.
Say what all of this means. I might be wrong, but darling, can't you see? This bond between us seems so special to me. Some kind of clear, unspoken chemistry. The message you're sending is mixed. I'm broken, I need to be fixed. I'm in need of attention. I'm in need of love. She's the road that holds me. Yes, I know she knows me well enough. She's the fire that blinds me, leaves my fears behind me for a while. Describe what's before my eyes, and it's something you can't see that I can't hide. I try to avoid all these thoughts inside when you're the only thing that's on my mind. The message you're sending is mixed. I'm broken, I need to be fixed. I'm in need of attention. I'm in need of love. She's the road that holds me. Yes, I know she knows me well enough. fears behind me for.
Perfect timing.
That was awesome.
And we're back. All right. So I guess I kind of picked a story or a kind of a point to discuss for the next half hour before the music break. The Conservative Party of Canada picked its new leader.
Yes.
Andrew Scheer.
It was actually a little surprising.
I didn't expect that at all.
Kind of a younger guy, not very well known, but apparently really, really conservative, even socially conservative.
Yeah.
And but he did mention that he's not going to reopen the abortion debate or the gay marriage debate. So
he's kind of following Harper in that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. He, I don't know. I mean, I guess we got to kind of touch on a few things. I don't know. He made some cracks about dairy farmers or something.
Yeah, he kind of tries to be because I read about that and I didn't quite get the joke.
Yeah,
but
me either.
Apparently, it was kind of it had something to do with like something Trump had said because Trump made a big deal about supply management in Canada with the dairy, and I don't understand it at all. I'm not even going to pretend. And so he said something about he made some joke about not special interest, and then he took a big swig of from a carton of milk underneath the podium. It's oh, you're funny. I guess
that's a joke. I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what
I guess he's
passes
trying
for humor in the Conservative Party. Yeah, I guess he's trying. I know.
Well, name the last really good conservative comedian you've heard. Like, I mean, honestly.
Good? The only one I could think of is...
I can't even think of a conservative comedian.
I watched a really terrible one.
Dennis Miller.
Ah, yes. Dennis Miller.
Yeah.
And I used to love Dennis Miller.
Foxworthy? I don't know, like redneck jokes.
He's
Larry
redneck
the
jokes, but
Cable Guy?
Probably votes Republican. I don't know.
Yeah,
Almost
I mean,
definitely.
The problem with Larry the Cable Guy is that's a caricature. It's not really him, and like
Stephen Colbert.
Yes.
The Rapport, total Republican.
Yeah,
but his comedy's not. His comedy I wouldn't say is conservative.
You don't think so?
No.
Because he's a Catholic.
Yeah.
And he's a conservative. He's a Republican.
No, he's not. That's his persona.
The character was.
The character.
But
he
even
himself is
Catholic.
is
Yes,
Catholic.
that's true. Yes, sorry. Yes.
But he keeps that.
He's a
stuff
progressive.
Separate.
Anyways. Oh, you're gonna Google, aren't you?
I
searching around, prove us wrong.
I could stand corrected. I maintain that
there's the Stephen Colbert of the Colbert Report. Like this is totally different from Andrew Scheer. But anyway,
that was a persona.
But that was a persona.
Right. You're right. Yes, you're right.
But I listened to an interesting report how when progressive people watch Colbert, they think he's making fun of conservatives. They think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But whereas when this was on the revisionist history, it was
Malcolm Gladwell,
right? Great podcast. But then when conservative people watch the old Stephen Colbert Report, they interpreted him as making fun of liberals, which is hilarious. Like, so he was able to play both sides that way. Yeah, very interesting.
Oh.
Which I think Malcolm Gladwell kind of said undermined the purpose of the satire in a way because
or it helped his career totally because everyone loved him.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, definitely.
But as for Andrew Scheer, yeah, exactly.
That's the problem. There's a collective. Who the fuck is this guy?
I was listening to Because News on CBC this week, and one of the questions that he posed to his panel was, how far into Andrew Scheer's name do you have to get on Google before who is Andrew, and then how far do you have to get before it
probably get to the whole damn name for you?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, actually, the day that he was elected the conservative leader, that's exactly the thing that I Googled. who is this person? And
Yeah,
it took the
you had
whole
to type
name.
in the whole, every letter. That's a really sad story.
It was weird because I
poor guy.
watched one of the kind of debates they had on. I can't remember. I think it was CTV on or whatever the main, not the CTV News, but their cable channel that they had.
Yep.
And they had kind of like a debate amongst the leaders. And the weird thing is he came across as kind of moderate, but way in the background. Like you had like O'Leary was still on there, and then Maxime Bernier, who was supposed to be the front runner, and he came across as just a douche. And
Kelly
then
Leach was
Kelly
on there.
Leach was kind of barking, but it was kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then there was Andrew Scheer, who kind of made a couple points, but I don't know. He didn't seem like he was going to be the winner. But I think he kind of came out of the left field because the Conservative Party's conservative. They didn't really, because Maxime Bernier was too
different.
radical. He
Too
was
different.
too radical.
Right.
Yeah. I've heard Scheer described as a smiling Stephen Harper. Right, like just more of the same from
Yeah.
them, right? Like just
he kind of has
Slightly
that.
updated hair.
Less dictator
updated
like.
hair.
Well, it's
Just
back.
younger.
It's not like
Yeah, he didn't have the Lego hair, but
No.
that smirk is painted on.
Oh, it's gross. I don't know.
He's kind of got that.
He doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, he's kind of got that.
vanilla milk
As a
toast.
politician, I mean, yeah.
He's kind of got a smirk, but I'm just kind of like going. That could be like he's like kind of. It's almost like a serial killer smirk. You know?
But yeah,
Sociopath.
but it's funny to me that he has been voted the leader of the Conservative Party because he's younger than Justin Trudeau.
Right, and one
And
of their main issues with him is
he's the guy
age.
that they can criticize the Liberal Party for voting Justin in.
But
and
How
he's-
old is he? Oh fuck! You know you're going to go on the
And
politicians.
he's
are the
only
same
ever been a
age as him.
politician
Jesus
too.
fucking
He doesn't
Christ.
have any like he's
then
young.
again, neither Harper was actually fairly young when he was started
Yeah,
leading.
that's true.
And
He's so good. Oh my god, I love that guy. Oh, wait, no.
Wait a second, that's not the right podcast.
Hang on.
But you know, like Harper went pretty much. He got his degree in economics and then boom, straight into politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's basically what Andrew Scheer has done,
And
essentially.
you know, but that might have been even part of the calculation. Is just like that superficial thing of, wow, Trudeau won and he was really young, so we need a young guy too.
Right.
Yeah.
It looks exactly like our old guy.
Because we can't be that radical. you
Well,
know?
no. Actual progress. It's just the superficial appearance of progress.
Well, and I find it.
We're against stem cells, but let's clone Harper.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. I don't know. It seems so weird that Rona Ambrose was the interim leader, and I don't know. Like she seems like she's super progressive and stuff, and I mean, I think she is to some degree. She's taking steps, but I don't know. It just seems like the Conservative Party. It's just the antithesis of feminism. It's the antithesis of any kind of advancement of women. It makes me sad.
Well, as I've said before, Canada always seems to follow the American trend to the Canadian-esque version.
Yeah.
And it's almost, I mean, the
That's
obvious.
why it was so worrisome that Kevin O'Leary was going to be running.
Yeah.
And Kelly Leach too. She had
Yeah.
she
wanted to be Trump.
She was
She had the bad
supporting
hair.
him. Yeah. And she was like, build a wall and let's, make the
I'm not entirely opposed to a wall.
I'm not.
And she said it's the separation between Canada and
we
the
just need to
States.
put
Yeah,
a
that's right.
gate in it.
Maybe we
Just
shouldn't be
in case.
complaining about Andrew Scheer because I don't really think he compares to Trump. I mean,
No, that's true.
I don't think so.
I've seen
seems to
some
be a real
smart ass
human.
comments that Scheer just guaranteed Trudeau another
Yeah,
term.
I kind of
I've
feel
seen
that
the
way.
same thing. Yeah. Yeah.
It really appears that he's kind of a non-starter.
well, I mean, like he didn't win the first round of voting. He won after the second round, and no conservative
This was
leader
the
has ever become
13th vote.
right. So no conservative leader has ever become prime minister without kind of winning in the first round.
Right. Yeah.
For his party. So you kind of need to have that dynamism. And
that's right.
I don't know. I think Trudeau's hard to go up against. Right. So he's almost, I wonder if Scheer is just kind of like a sacrificial lamb from the Conservative perspective. Like,
so,
I mean, then again, like, I mean, look at how many, you know, if we're going to keep with that metaphor, how many lambs to the slaughter there were in the Liberals before they got Trudeau.
That's true.
Well,
yeah,
that's the
right.
thing.
So,
because they were going up against Harper, who was pretty consistently winning.
Yeah. I mean, although he won, you know, minority, and they finally gave him his majority, and then that's
but
kicked
Trudeau,
him out. But.
yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough. I mean, the Liberals got a majority, but they still only had 38% of the popular vote, right? It's comparable to what the Conservatives ever got. So.
True, but that's numbers. It's always hard to.
I tend to like numbers.
Fair enough, but you know what I mean.
Numbers like you too.
Like I mean, yeah, they only got that much of the popular vote, but then with our goofy population, you know, how's the Spurs to yada yada yada.
Yeah,
like
that's right.
That's right. Oh.
It's hard to make a system that I think will truly work, but.
This one's interesting. This article from the CBC. It's an opinion piece from Neil MacDonald.
I love his articles. I really
love him too.
I appreciate the words that he says.
I like his words too.
Sometimes. Well, apparently, according to this anyway, Andrew Scheer has said that he will not impose his religious beliefs on Canadians. So, but that's questionable because when these people have these firm beliefs, it's hard for them to necessarily remove that from their decisions.
You look at even Harper created, what was that office he created? The Office of Religion, or I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, that's right. And the Office of Religious Freedom or something, but there was no atheists in it at all.
There was no freedom in there. But
was that similar to the hotline?
No, that was separate. That was a different thing. That was different. That was a last minute panic election thing, I think.
Yeah, that was fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Honor Killings hotline.
Ridiculous as my love for Angela.
Angela's religious family is going to listen to this someday.
Someday.
If that's the part that upsets them the most, then they aren't listening.
They aren't listening.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Control yourselves over there.
I forgot he's listening. That's like the voice of God. Oh my God. Okay, I believe.
I'm sorry.
It's worse than the voice of God. It's the voice of Dave.
It's the voice of Dave.
In our new setup, Dave is in a separate room from the rest of the crew, so he's the disembodied voice.
He's flipping us the bird right now. We don't even know.
You will bring me all the Skittles.
I'm fucking eating all the Skittles, dude.
No.
Why do you? There was a sacrifice.
Oh yeah.
The
only
God
the
of
green
Dave.
ones. Only the green. I don't know.
The god of audio.
Anyways, I'll stop derailing this train.
Oh, I think it's pretty derailed.
I don't know how much more there is to say about Andrew Scheer. He's actually not too interesting.
No, I mean, the thing
so
is
vanilla.
his
toast.
So far,
I love
his
that word.
like, if you looked at that one meme I shared, like, I can't remember where I stole that one from, but it looks like he votes pretty conservative,
Yeah,
like
that's
socially conservative, like pretty religious based, and like so
Yes.
it might be a little scary.
Yeah.
But then again, in Canada, we have a religious base, but we don't go as fire and brimstone like they do down in the States.
No, that's right.
No.
So
It's amazing. There's so much. It's so discouraging sometimes just to see people that are criticizing Justin as vehemently as they are and just resorting to just ridiculousness. It just makes me sad for our province.
Well, I think the problem is that, you know, like we made fun of Harper, said all kinds of shit about Harper, but we could also then back it up with what he's doing.
Yeah.
Whereas with Justin Trudeau, for the most part, it's because he's liberal and he has the last name of Trudeau.
Yeah.
I mean, out west, that has just so much baggage people just hate Pierre Trudeau for a million reasons that aren't really that I don't think they truly stand up to criticism. Like, I mean, the National Energy Program, okay, it's a debatable thing whether that was good or bad. Like,
right,
but that's one they really hated. And there's this weird thing about the whole when he was elected, there was the big chance of the West wants in, and because he didn't stick it to the frogs, to Quebec, then suddenly they
Oh, by the way, in Canada, that's super insulting to people. Who
But do you know what the Frenchies call the Anglos then?
That one I don't know. That one.
Les têtes carrées, pointy heads. Like square heads, but les têtes carrées.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna ask
I don't understand.
I have
that insult at all.
like an Anglophone is born, he like hurts his mother on his way out because of his pointy head sort of jokes.
I'm gonna ask my francophone friend about that.
That's hilarious.
We need a little bit of culture translation for that one, but but that's just it. Is because that was
I'm
part
fucking
of
wrong, and I just told all 5 of our listeners that's true. War, what's it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
sorry. That was a Seinfeld reference. Elaine. No, Jerry convinces Elaine because she's working for a book publisher, and he convinces Elaine that Tolstoy's War and Peace was originally called War, What's It Good For? And she brings this up as a total fact to her boss. Did you know that War and Peace was originally called War, What's It Good For? And then she, Jerry's like, you believe me? War, what's it good for? Anyway, it goes on and on.
Seinfeld.
That's great.
Brilliant.
So Andrew Scheer.
See, and this is the thing about Andrew Scheer is we talked about him for a couple of minutes and then we veered off.
So uninteresting.
So uninteresting.
Watching paint dry, watching a crew paint dry.
But the cautionary tale should be is that Trump was a fucking joke up till the day he got truly got elected.
That's true.
So we can.
On
At
the
least
plus
Trump
side,
was interesting.
Yeah, that's right. This guy's just not interesting.
I think he was more polarizing because I don't really have a formed opinion about Andrew Scheer. Yeah, he's conservative. I'm sure lots of our opinions would differ.
Skewed because of that.
Yeah, that's right.
But he's, like we said, I mean, he's the middle of the road. He's not very controversial. I mean, if O'Leary had been voted in, that would be something, but
there'd be something
out.
To say at least.
Absolutely, or even Kelly Leach, that would have been epic if she got in because she was saying some really
she was taking her cues from Trump and trying to rock the boat and whatever.
Totally. So I mean, whether she was pandering or whatever the heck that was.
I mean, this could be a case of the people were looking at it going, well, Harper, he was kind of a walking, talking Lego. That worked for 10 years. Yeah. We need to let's go back to that.
But this whole nationalism thing is kind of sweeping the globe. I wonder, are Canadians just not Canadian conservatives just not susceptible to this? Are they just
I think they are because I think there is, but it's still filtered through that weird low-key Canadianism.
Yeah, that's right.
Raw Canadian, eh? Sorry if it offends you.
Sort of, maybe kind of a little bit anyway.
Yeah.
That's not the impression that I get. I see a lot of people that are really critical and they're fucking ignorant because
there's a lot of I've seen a lot of vehement anti-Muslim shit on.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
They're ignorant and they're very nationalist in the way they're talking, and more.
But are they members of the Conservative Party of Canada? Right?
The
people that share rebel media shit.
They would vote that way if somebody with anti-immigrant or racist undertones came into leadership position. But I don't know that they'd join the Conservative Party and vote in 13 fucking rounds for the Conservative leader, right? That's going to be your farm couple who goes to church every weekend, and they want another Harper, right? So they may not have.
I would have gone to the convention, but I got curling this weekend.
Yes, exactly. I gotta play road app.
The angry conservatives in Canada that are online, they're still sitting in front of their computers while the voting is going on.
Yeah.
And they're like, make make me sandwich. He didn't get the crust off.
Trudeau sucks.
Yes.
I hate feminism.
Oh fuck! We should have asked Karen what her definition of a feminist was for Gumby.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah. Dang it.
Or which wave she belongs to.
Yes.
That's one of the anti-feminist things is that
the
third
first-
wave is the worst wave.
Oh, I didn't know there were waves.
Apparently.
It's such bullshit. I'm sorry. It's just bullshit. I'm annoyed.
It's easy to
Don't
get there.
piss this woman off, man. She's powerful.
But those are the people that we're talking about anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I don't know if they're as like the feminist angle.
No,
But they're
it would definitely be.
Trudeau's an idiot.
Yeah,
But, you know, like
It
that,
definitely
they're the
got the anti-Muslim stuff going on.
Yeah. What I heard on the radio this week was, this isn't only slightly off topic, but that
Is it about Andrew Scheer?
No, but it's people are complaining that all of the temporary foreign workers and all of the refugees are stealing the jobs from young people.
Oh.
That's an
So,
old complaint.
Fucking high school kids can't get a job, so they want a job at HMV, which closed.
Stop buying your kids cars and they'll take the job at McDonald's.
They'll
The problem
deliver
is
papers.
the thing is that they stopped the temporary workers program.
That's true.
They
Which
did.
I heard some people going, well, now we can't have anyone working at Tim Hortons, blah. But the thing was the temporary workers program, if I remember it, like it was turned out kind of shady. Like they'd bring them over and put them in apartments and stack them like
I
cordwood.
wasn't
like,
overly supportive of the. I mean, I would rather pay people a living wage. I don't actually have a problem with immigrants coming in and taking a job. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I just. I feel like you don't want to treat people like second class citizens. They're not citizens, second class people in our society and have them marginalized. And it does. I believe that like employers were choosing, for example, these temporary foreign workers over like a high school student because they're out. They can work however many hours. There's no scheduling issues. There's no around your extracurricular or your school. They're just there.
Yeah.
But I think that it'd be better to pay people a living wage that Canadian citizens are willing to, or immigrants to Canada who are coming here to live here and be here.
Exactly. And I think that's the story people aren't including in their statement. Okay, temporary foreign workers are willing to work for less because they have to send money home to all 85 of their relatives who are destitute. And
well, they don't get to stay, right? So I mean, you're kind of building these people up just to send them away. I would
To essentially spend the money somewhere else.
I personally much prefer to have have immigrants come here to enrich our country.
I think I would too. I mean, ultimately, it'd be better for them because then they have a better life and they don't have.
Well, our whole country's based on this.
Yeah,
like this is good for everyone.
Absolutely, I agree.
And on that note,
C'est fini.
Let's move into some music break. I will bring up my songs here. Okay, so we'll take the music break here. Live listeners and patrons, you can enjoy the next few minutes, and then we'll be back for regular feed subscribers. This is where we'll end the Skeptic Studio. This week's music break is Shadow of the Sun by the Civilian Project, aka Audio Slave, In Need by Gert Taberner, and Small Things by Ben Howard. Well, that's all our stories for tonight. So we'll talk about Patreon. We're back on an upswing. 2 new patrons this break.
No way.
Yeah. I don't know Lachlan.
Lachlan.
But we really appreciate the support. And
thanks, dude.
We also got a Michael. Michael McElroy is formerly of the Irreverent Skeptics podcast. I don't think they put out episodes anymore, but it was like the Canadian or the American Brainstorm.
Oh.
Or maybe we were like the Canadian Irreverent Skeptics.
Oh.
Both shows started around the same time, and they
disbanded.
They kind of stopped putting stuff out, but
well, that's too bad.
Yeah, it is. It was a really good show. I really enjoyed it. But Mike from that show is now a patron of our show.
Thanks for your support.
So really appreciate the support. If you want to become a patron and have access to a ton of patron-only content, including exclusive content for $5 and up patrons, then you can go to patreon.com/brainstorm podcast.
I thought you were going to say, if you want to be a patron and have access to tons of money, you can be a patron.
You could be, if you have access to tons of money, you can be a really big patron.
We'll sell you our kidneys. We don't care.
Yeah, that's right.
Be in a cold tub of ice.
No new iTunes reviews. Will from the US, not Will from Canada, sent us an email offering to help out with the website. So thanks, Will. I really appreciate it. And I'll keep in touch to eventually we'll get this thing caught up.
Do it. We'll do it. Yes.
So anybody got anything to plug?
Nope.
No? Dave, what was that? What was the movie that you mentioned a couple weeks ago?
I'm not sure which one I mentioned. There's a few going on.
Was it the hockey one?
Yeah, well, that one we did have a premiere. Was it Friday? Yeah, Friday. Last Friday.
Nice.
And went really good and was fun.
It was well received.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yorkton Film Fest was 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
Which is why I wasn't available.
That's why we had to sit at Lisa's house.
Yeah. So, and that went good. We won Best of Saskatchewan for a little film called Gas Can.
Nice.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, thanks. It was cool. I got to be on stage and look cool. It was
Right
a good
on.
weekend. I was partying with a bunch of older executives from across Canada, doing all kinds of weird things.
That's awesome.
But,
that sounds like a good story for some
shooting
bonus
guns.
content right there.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Eh? Right on.
That's about it. There's so many things going on right now, to be honest, with the films I'm working on, that it's kind of hard to plug all of it. But From Up North, documentary I worked on, just won Best Aboriginal International Film in New Zealand at a festival there. So
No Nice. way.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Freaking hey. That's awesome.
Anyway, that's it.
Sounds good. My other show, The Hardcore Skeptic Examines, is on episode 6, and so far has been a success in some sort of sense.
That's cool.
There's been a bit of controversy about my commentary, but I think I'm doing a pretty good show.
Good.
And if someone wants to come with some constructive criticism, I can take that. And I'm more than willing to hear them out.
Gaslighter.
Yeah, well. Next episode should be out on Tuesday, June 13th. You can check that out at Spreaker.com/show/The Hardcore Skeptic Examines. So let's cue that outro music. And that is all the notes. Check out show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com and our website, brainstormblog.net. Obviously, it's still behind, but it looks like I may have help soon. So that'll get caught up. Thanks to those who support the show through Patreon. Will, Lisa, Rob, Aaron, Nathan, Daryl, Marissa, Janet, Stephanie, Positively Skeptical, and now Michael and Lachlan. Make sure to join us every second week live on Spreaker.com/user/brainstormpodcast. Our next guest is Callie Wright. Again, and we're probably going to talk about her new show, the current state of the world, and pretty much anything else that comes up. Thanks to Dr. Karen Garst for joining us tonight. You can find more her book. These notes are terrible. You can find her book on Amazon. Excuse me.
Her audiobook just came out for those of you that like audiobooks.
Yeah, I'm sure it's on Audible. You can follow her blog, faithlessfeminist.com. Jesus.
Speaking of frogs.
Yeah, that's right. Links will be in the show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com and eventually on brainstormblog.net. Thanks to Dave for our intro music. Thanks to Alex Capper-Murdoch for doing the voiceover for the intro and for some of our ads. And thanks to Jason Camo for our outro music. You can find his stuff at loststateofmind.com. All music is played either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info on our website, brainstormblog.net. You can get your cool Brainstorm gear at cafepress.ca/brainstormpodcastgear. If you have a cool shirt, a hat, take a pic and send it our way, and we will put you up on the website. Thanks again for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast, with the possible exception of Cory, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.
We just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interaction sometimes with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.